And thank you, Liz, for joining us and for being willing to talk about creativity and share your work with us. This is a real treat.
You're very welcome. I'll start with, I'm going to explain a little bit more about who I am when we get going, but I just want to start with a little bit of, well, it looks almost like your glass, sort of, but it's, I just put together today this really short, this little short, I just wanted to walk you through real quick some of the beautiful images that I've done with marbling, and this thing should be moving. It's not, so I guess I'll just move it. Let's see if I can move it. Well, I was going to move it. It was a slideshow, but I guess we'll just.
There's a play button at the
bottom.
bottom.
Oh, I know there's a play button. Thank you. Hello. I haven't done a video very much, but these are just some of the marbled papers that that I've created, and you can see there's a lot of curvy, wavy, I don't know, things going on. And these are flawed papers too. You can see little streaks running through. I'm not always perfect, and that's okay because I do different things with this paper. I'm not going for perfection, but if I were a bookbinder and I didn't want those little ripples and seams, I'd have to go a lot more carefully and be more mindful. But anyway, these are
just gorgeous.
Some of the gorgeosity.
Yeah.
Double marbling. Sometimes I marble over something more than once. You can run it back through. Again, look at those combed patterns. I'm so proud of that. I took an online class.
Yeah, we comb.
Yeah.
Oh, you comb too. Yeah, and this is a double marble. So that's just a little teaser. I just wanted to show you that before I launch into the actual slideshow. So what I'm going to talk about today is a little bit about creativity, because I think it's important. And I have discussions with artists about this all the time about, oh, gee, I'm so creative. I do this work. But I found out that, your own native talent and creativity aren't really enough. I feel like we're all under the influence of other artists that have come before us, whether we've taken them in a class or, looked at them in museums. I'm going to take you on a little journey today through my paintings and those of a guest artist who I think you'll like, to show you, some of the things that have shaped and influenced my art. And along the way, I'll share some of my secrets. Live tonight. And we'll talk about creating and recognizing your best work. And before I begin, I want to let you know that I have put together a PDF file with all the quotes and things in this, so that if you can't write quickly and you feel like, oh, I missed something, I want to that you rest assured you'll have a little PDF handout at the end of this to help you get all the good bits. Now I'm going to open this PowerPoint. Just one second, then I'll share screen. Okay, share screen. And get rid of that. Okay, there we go. There we go. All right, let me get rid of these little buttons. Sorry, I'm hiding all the thumbnails so I can see. Okay. Once you realize that everything is an influence, it all starts to make sense. A couple years ago, my husband and I went to the Diebenkorn Matisse exhibit in San Francisco, and it was kind of a neat exhibit. They put paintings side by side so that you could see how Diebenkorn was influenced by a Matisse exhibit that he had seen. And it wasn't a one-for-one, but it was really nice to see how Diebenkorn sort of interpreted Matisse, still hinting at the work that would become Diebenkorn's work. So what or who influences us? Well, other artists' work that we see in galleries and museums. Obviously, images on the internet. We're seeing a lot of that now, social media. Workshop instructors, they can be a big influence. But mainly, artists who have solved a problem we're trying to resolve in our own work. All creative journeys begin with a challenge to introspection, to fathom not only what's out there, but what's in here. That's a quote by Donna Zagata. For me, being an artist is about four things: having a personal, recognizable style, doing some innovative borrowing, having high standards, and the need for recognition. And I'll explain each of these. So personal style. Art, I feel like, is a dialogue between the viewer and the artist. And I feel like I found my own style of painting, and I try and tell a story that, viewers will find compelling. Innovative borrowing. We want to resist the tyranny of technique. So many times we, take a workshop and we end up painting just like that painter or that artist. I try to take one thing I've learned in a workshop and incorporate it into my work. Borrow, don't steal. My mentor, Carlo O'Connor, says, if you copy me, I get all the credit. Having high standards. Learn to be your own best critic and be honest with yourself. Whoops, sorry. If you don't love your painting, no one else will. Aim to create work that stands apart from the rest, and then compare your works. Know your A-list paintings or artwork from your B-list. And if you want your work to get noticed, make sure it walks funny. That's a quote from my friend Jeff Mccormick, and you'll see his work in a moment. About that need for recognition. Your audience and or your desire for sales will dictate the kind of art you produce. There are three kinds of paintings, although there may be four. My husband and I have discussed this, but three kinds of paintings, which is those that go into a show, those that sell, and those that are personal. And the fourth kind that we're thinking about is paintings or artwork that you do as practice. Practice is for yourself. They shouldn't end up being sold probably because you're learning as you go. Be yourself. Everyone is taken. Everyone else is taken. If you haven't connected your work with yourself, your painting will never be alive. What really counts and what really makes us better artists is delving deep into what makes us unique, what obsesses us, and what we can't live without. So I'll go into my little story. I grew up in San Antonio, and I was an art major at Trinity University, and that's where I met Manny Newberger. I spent 10 years as a technical writer, and during that time I did no art, and I have to tell you, it was pretty miserable. We did some career moves to California and then to Boston, and then in 1990, at age 32, I was working in Boston. I was very unhappy with work, and I took a Saturday course in watercolor, and I fell in love with it. And I created 100 paintings in the first year, and I was working full time. This was the very first painting I did in 1990 after a 10-year absence. I had a little Prang watercolor set, and I looked out my back window, and this is what I painted. And I keep this as a reminder to humble myself about where I had to start. Art became a priority for me. I kept painting. Our daughter was born in 1993. I was still working full time as a tech writer, but I was miserable. And finally, my husband and I had a talk and said, you know what? I think we'll both be a lot happier if I quit the day job. And this was 1997, and I wanted to raise our 4-year-old and become better at art. And that's what I did. So I took more classes, read magazines and books, and formed a critique group with friends. Embracing a life of art is the best decision I ever made. And about those 100 paintings, it's only paper. You can paint a lot of it. You can paint on the back if you don't like it. I put these two watercolors together because the one on the left is one of my early pieces, which I still like. But you can see on the right, 10 years later, my values were much stronger, my color sense. So it's just interesting to compare and contrast your old work with your new. I had to start all over again because we moved from Boston to Portland, Oregon in 1999. My husband got a job at Intel. So at age 40, I started all over again, and I made new friends, made new art connections, which you all are familiar with doing. And I joined our state Watercolor Society of Oregon in 2002. And began, really benefited from the instructors that they would have come to our conventions twice a year. We would have national artists come in and give demos, critiques, and really teach us, how to look at our work. It was my second education in art, really. And then I started teaching watercolor at the Community Ed Center, which was kind of a neat way to become a better painter. We artists are on a quest. My goal is to show you how the practice and habit of making art and acknowledging our influences can help us become better, more productive artists. Practice influences productive artists. I used to believe that I had to paint from photographs, that I had to learn how to draw well before I could paint, that if I was going to do figures, they had to be anatomically correct. And if I followed all these rules, I would be a successful artist. Happily, I was wrong. If the man who paints only what he sees before him were an artist, the king of artists would be the photographer. It is for the artist to do something beyond this. So getting beyond technique, my friend Ruth Armitage was on a local art show here, and she told a story about how she used to paint a perfect crystal vase of flowers. This is just a photo, but and people would come up to her and admire her paintings and say, wow, that crystal vase looks so realistic. You did such a good job. And after a while, she felt like, wow, they're complimenting my technique, but there's no me in this painting. It's just devoid of any of me. And she started to think about that. And I think all artists start to think about that. So I started using my imagination, and what happened was I had to do a demo in front of students in this watercolor class, and I was a firm believer in not feeling like we had to set up a still life and everyone had to paint the same thing. I know that's a good way to learn, but as a student, I felt that was a little boring. And so I said to them one day, what if I just put my arm across this sheet of paper, traced it, painted in my arm, and then made up the rest of the painting from my own imagination. And I did the demo partly in front of them, and then I finished it at home. But that sort of excited me and made me realize, wow, I mean, maybe I can make a painting this other way. This was another making it up as I go. I took a class from one of my local teachers here, Harold Walkup, and he had learned an exercise in another class. And the exercise was this. You give everyone in the class a raisin, and you say, all right, I want you to make the head as small as a raisin on this figure, and any figure you want to do. And then the body needs to be big enough that it goes off the paper on all sides. And so I rose to that challenge and came up with this little gem. And it got me really excited about, well, what if I could do people like not anatomically correct, on purpose? I could get away with it. So I changed my whole approach to painting. I began working from my imagination and my memory. I didn't have to worry about photos or copyright issues. I also decided maybe I'd put down paint first and then decide on the subject matter later. And that's sort of a cloud watching technique that I'll show you in a bit. I could paint things that look sort of like people. They didn't have to be perfect, but the audience will understand. And so I didn't have painter's block. I didn't worry about what to paint. And by breaking some of the rules, I became a happier, more productive artist. So I mentioned Harold Walkup. He's one of my local mentors here. His painting is on the left, and I really liked his wonky people. They were sort of misshapen. There's a little bit romantic of that. And my response, I mean, I didn't do this consciously, but I did a couple that was kind of reflective, I think, of me and my husband. And you'll notice I kept my little raisin heads. Maybe they weren't quite as small, but people often ask me, well, why the blank faces? Why don't you just paint faces in? And my reason is that I just feel like when I paint faces on, first of all, they're not very good. And second of all, I'm telling you how to feel. If I put a sad face on her or a pensive face, now you're inferring some other things. But if I leave it blank, you can bring your own story to the game. So I told you about those jurors that used to come and give us critiques on our work, and they taught us some really important things. I had this sofa seat series, and I just want to, if your eye starts from the upper left where the door frame is and works down to her head and to her elbow, then to the cat, then to the edge of the table and out, it's sort of a Z composition, and it kind of moves you in and out of the painting, which is really desirable when you want people to look at your work. I used a very limited palette, just 3 colors, but mixed together, they form new colors. And I had a lot of different values in it, light and dark, and overlapping shapes. So I got pretty formulaic about this. I felt like, ooh, I've figured out this composition thing. And so work that goes beyond the ordinary. The content of the work is the most important thing. This is a quote from my friend Ruth Armitage. When I view a show, the pieces that stand out to me are the ones that show the artist's complete passion. So what makes a great painting? Jurors kind of highlight the big 3. It seems to be that award-winning paintings embody more than just technique. Jurors highlight the big 3: color, composition, but above all, content. Content connects us to the work by telling a story and conveying an emotion, and it invites the audience to linger in front of your painting a little longer. So I felt like I was standing at an artistic crossroads. Listening to jurors, I wonder, what was my work trying to say? Was I playing it too safe with my colors and compositions? After 15 years, believe it or not, I was bored with the constraints of watercolor, and I felt like it was time to learn something new. As luck would have it, I took a workshop from a painter here in Oregon named Susan Cowan, and she is the one responsible for switching me from watercolor to acrylics. I'd used acrylics in college, but at the time I was so poor in college, and art supplies were so expensive, we used house paint, latex paint. But here we had these beautiful golden, is the brand, fluid acrylics that behaved in a very similar way to watercolors, except they dried. They went down and they stayed dry. This is one of my early pieces about luck. I have a couple of others I'll show you, but this was a monotype. I just put acrylic on a plexiglass plate, put treated paper down, pulled it back, and had this mushy kind of beautiful stuff. And from there, I built up this imaginary scene from my own head. People told me later, when they looked at it, they said, it almost looks like she's trying to stop them from gambling. And I said, I don't know. There was something caused me to go to the internet and look up and see what a gambling table looked like. I had no idea. So, story. Acrylics opened up a whole new world for me. As I said, I learned monoprinting, and I realized that, you know, acrylics dried so quickly. I didn't have to wait for watercolors to dry it for hours. These were very vibrant colors. They would go down and stay down, and I could use opaques like black and white, which is kind of a no-no in watercolor. So this is one of my monotypes, monoprints, you can call them, on the left. That's what it looked like when I pulled it off the plexiglass. And you can see what I did on the right. I simply mixed up some lighter blue and negatively painted around what I perceived as a vase, and then added more red to the flowers. And that was my finished painting. The cloud watching that I talked about, the putting color down and then deciding, came about through this monoprinting. You can see I have a beautiful luminous monoprint on the left. And then I just started taking a water-soluble crayon and drawing a jazz trio onto the dried paper. And then from there, it's really just a matter of painting in the positive shapes, filling everyone in, a little bit like a coloring book, but a little bit more interesting than that. So I want to show you the difference a little bit to intensity wise between, you know, watercolor and acrylic. These were 2 paintings done probably only years apart. Notice I still have those very small heads. And the one on the right is very, very bright because these acrylics are so vibrant and durable. Watercolor dries about 30% lighter than what you put it down. So I really like that stronger intensity. And we get to the piece de resistance, which is marbling. So that same teacher, Susan Cowan, who taught us acrylics and acrylic monoprinting, one day in her bag of papers, we spied this beautiful patterned paper and we said, "Hey, what's that?" And she said, "Oh, that's acrylic marbling. I learned that years ago." And we said, "We must have a workshop." So Susie started teaching workshops in acrylic in her backyard in Portland in about 2006. And we had more fun. But the thing is, I would see a paper like this, and some people would say, "Well, that's nice piece of paper. Well, what are you going to do with it?" was my question. So I came upon a way, I don't think it's original of me, but I wanted to make a painting out of this paper. Now, we were marbling on heavier watercolor paper, not thin bookbinding paper. So I could paint directly on this. So what I saw as I looked at it was in the center a wine bottle with a cork. You can see the purple bubbles on it. And I just, with my water soluble crayon, drew these people, drew a table, drew a wine bottle. And then I'm skipping a few steps, but this is how I finished it. That other beige color, as you can see, was really not right for this. I went back in and sort of finished it up. And I felt like I had a new style. This painting actually won a prize in a rose show or something. So it was kind of exciting. I felt like, wow, this is great. Now, one thing about marbling, I put this painting in another show and I wasn't able to go to the reception, but my friend went and she said she asked the juror, "What do you think of this painting?" And he said, "It's a trick." And she said, "Well, I mean, is it a good trick or a bad trick?" And he didn't want to talk about it. He really didn't. He thought this was gimmicky and whatever, and he didn't like it. Fine. So I put it in another national show and it won an award. And so I say this by way of saying there will be detractors who don't think what you're doing is legit or good or they don't like it. You know what? Tough. You do it anyway. Do it because you want to. Don't do it for someone else. This is how that painting looked, by the way. This was an old canvas that I'm showing you. It had turned on its side because that's how it ended up getting developed. And this is how chaotic the canvas looked after I first marbled it. I mean, you dip it into this tray, you pull it out. It's chaos. You bring it home, let it dry, and you look at it, and then you start trying to decide what you want it to look like. And that's how this ended up with a couple more steps. So I kept marbling, and you can see I have some small heads and some bigger heads. There were some family illnesses and some deaths in the family, and I kind of had this theme going for a while that, you know, life is just like a series of lucky or unlucky events, and, you know, hence the cards and the luck theme. I still like my romantic couples. I still got tiny heads going on, but these all stemmed from marbling. And in fact, the very plain painting on the left, if you look at her shoe there on the bottom, that was actually a failed piece of marbled paper that didn't quite connect with the tray. And so only a little bit of marbling clung to it. And it was a mistake, but it was a wonderful mistake. And I turned it into, you know, kind of a charming painting. On the right, you know, it was the marbling that's in their clothing. That whole paper looked like that until I went in and painted around the couple. I started, you know, getting a little larger with my work, doing some collage, adding to that, getting in some shows. It was kind of nice. I feel like me and a few other people actually started submitting more marbling paintings to shows and getting in, and I think we helped maybe legitimize it a little bit. I like to think that. So the best kind of influence is artists who have solved a problem we're trying to resolve in our own work. I want to hit home, borrow, don't copy, because you're going to see a lot of influential side-by-sides here. And I'm going to tell you how these artists helped me solve my problems. So again, all of this came out later. it wasn't like I saw her painting and painted my painting, but what happened was I had a painting on the right and it only had the central figure, the front figure. And I couldn't figure out how to resolve this painting. And I started to think about Carla O'Connor. She's a Gig Harbor, Washington artist. And I said, you know, Carla always puts a big figure in the front, and then she has these side figures in the back to help round out the painting. And once I did that, I balanced my painting and solved the problem, and it got into a show and won an award. So even my palette's a little bit similar, but again, I already had these colors. This is another Oregon artist, Carolee Clark, and I love her exaggeration. I love those big feet. I kind of wish I'd made the woman on my painting have bigger feet, but maybe that'd be copying. But I thought of her distortion, and just thinking about it gave me the courage to say, yeah, I like this painting's offbeat funkiness. I'm going to go ahead and go with that. Mary Carlton died about 5 years ago, but what I love about her piece and what helped me in my piece was I had this very busy coat. You can see there's a lot of patterning going on, and the whole painting almost looked like that coat. And I thought to myself, well, I can negative paint, but I want to do something a little bit more interesting. And I couldn't forget thinking about her yellow, the creamy yellow that she uses for her quiet pieces, her quiet passages in the painting. And so I put that creamy yellow behind my busy figure, and all of a sudden, done. I felt like I was headed in the right direction. This was about 2014, and I felt like I had a way to put my personality and some story into my work. I had a method of applying paint, which was acrylic or acrylic marbling. I understood who my influences were, and I had a pretty consistent habit of painting nearly every day. And I had more hits than misses. I was getting into some shows and winning awards. So I had this goal, and it was to attain signature membership in the National Watercolor Society. And I will tell you that despite its name, they do accept acrylic paintings on paper. So that was where I was headed. I was really motivated, and I had a passion for the work. I felt like time disappeared whenever I came into the studio. And I really had a desire for community acceptance and validation from other artists. I think that's what a lot of us are getting from this art practice. I had a willingness to compare my work to other artists working in a similar vein. And I felt like I could take risks and aim for the ceiling. Aiming for the ceiling. If the formal rules of art are the floor, let's try and aim for the ceiling. I finally reached my goal in 2015, which after 12 years of trying, this painting finally got me signature membership. Although it's acrylic and collage, I have to say, once you get a painting into their open show, you have to submit 3 other paintings on paper to show them that you are a working artist and you have a cohesive body of work. And so these were 2 of my supporting paintings. And I feel like I found my people. This was 2015. We got to go to San Pedro, California, and stand on the podium with the president of NWS, and it was pretty cool. And I don't know if you're familiar with an art mail order place called Cheap Joe's in North Carolina, but Joe Miller owns it, and he gives everyone who gets signature membership this brush holder with lots of brushes in it. Anyway, it was really fun. But what happens is you come home from that sort of thing, and you have to really come off cloud 9. And I came home with a sense of excitement, but I wondered, well, now what? I didn't want to lose my momentum or rest on my laurels. So I formed a critique group with 3 other Oregon artists who also were NWS signature members. And we set goals and we hold each other accountable. We named ourselves Critical Mass because all 4 of us have to be there for it to be a meeting. And I continued to embrace my influences. Carla O'Connor again. This is one of her beautiful, it's probably watercolor and gouache, which is a more opaque watercolor. And you can see she's got beautiful figures and fans and kimonos. And as I sat down to do this painting, I know I had hers in the back of my mind, but I did it with collage and acrylic tissue papers, or marble tissue papers, I should say. And this painting won a magazine contest and they let me write an article about marbling. So that was pretty neat. Persist. If you give up on your art when you aren't happy with it, then all you ever learn is how to start. You never learn how to finish. Starting a painting is really easy. Finishing it requires that I spend many hours thinking about and looking at my paintings. My best show paintings are the ones I take the time to truly finish. You might ask, well, when is a painting finished? A painting is finished when there's nothing that you want to add or take away, when your critique group says or convinces you it's finished, your audience says it's finished, or a customer buys it and takes it out of your hands so you can't paint on it anymore. That's one way it's really finished. I talk about old paintings, and I know it's probably different for you in the glass thing. I don't think you recycle or redo your glass. I'm not sure, but with artists, we have a lot of cast-off paintings that could probably go in the recycle bin, or in the case of acrylics, get reworked. And I'm rather thrifty, and I like to keep my old failed paintings in a stack in the garage. And I go out there every couple of months, years, and just pull something out of the pile. And that's what I did with this painting. It was not complete. It was a demo I did, and I marbled it, and I kind of shaped up the face, and I transformed it, and it got into a show. So, I just say there's always gold in them hills. You just got to look for it. This is another influence. Wayne Thiebaud just died earlier this year, and we probably know him for his aerial landscapes and his cupcakes. But I was surprised to find that he had done a dress hanging on a hanger, and I had done a more abstracted one that was just kind of an experiment. You can see some marbling on the dress, and on a lark, I just painted in that little figure, and it got into a show and won an award. It was very strange. This is one of my favorite influencers, and this is Kat Hegman from Mississippi. And you can see the beautiful dark and light values in that painting. And she does a lot of women in flouncy dresses. Sometimes they have a bird, but her looking at the way she uses dark and black so bravely. She's an oil painter mostly, but it gave me the courage to really go dark in this other painting. And I don't think I would have done that if I hadn't seen her work. And I saw her work because we were both in a show, and our paintings were in a catalog. So that's one way I scope out new artists. So what happened here is that everyone had taken Susie's marbling class. And after a while, you can only have so many, speckled pear paintings. Pears are very lovely and easy to do with marbling. And I thought, well, everyone's marbling. How can I be a little different? And so I started to kind of manipulate the marbling a bit more in the tray, probably the way you all can manipulate some of what you do in glass. And I realized I needed those quieter plain passages behind the marbled figure to really pop it out. And I really tried to hone my style and be a little bit different and not just do pears. Design is everywhere. We get the New York Times online, and I don't know who this illustrator is, but I love his use of all these gray tones with a little bit of bright. And while I was trying to resolve this painting, I realized, blacks, whites, grays, they're all beautiful, but you need a pop of color there to really bring things out. And so that's an influence. This is very neutral color. My moon is kind of wonky, but I did this around the same year that we had the eclipse here. And one of my buyers looked at it. She just said, I've got to have that. That's just so evocative, and looking at the moon. And so you can really create a sense of story and place with your subject matter. There's also, art history influences. I did this reclining nude, and my friend Jeff said, "Hey, that looks like an odalisque. You should title it that way. It looks like the Olympia." I said, "Okay." So it's kind of neat what it comes to mind. We have these things imprinted in our brain, and they just come out when we paint. The difference between a master and a beginner is that the master has failed more times than the beginner has ever tried. And by that, I mean, some paintings just don't work out, but you have to keep going. So you want to keep being influenced by other artists, you know, and the way I do that is I try not to get too self-involved or focused on just my work. I need to look at other people's work too. And I need to explore different artists and techniques. What can I learn from someone else? And I am really good at forming alliances with other artists I admire. I end up contacting them through Facebook or whatnot. And another way is to interview an artist and give a talk or write an article about his or her work. And that's what I did for one of our local shows. And I'm going to introduce you in just a moment to Jeff Mccormick. That's the artist I'm going to talk about. These are two early paintings that he looked at in the museum. It was very influenced by this trompe l'oeil, which is deceive the eye, where it looks three-dimensional, but it's actually a flat painting. And Jeff really took to that. These are some of his paintings. He's been in national magazines. And you can see he's really playing with tape, and he uses airbrush, by the way. That's how he gets this fine detail. But he's playing with the illusion of, is that string going across the rock, or it looks so real? And you'll see this in his subsequent works. Reflecting on his success, he said, I quit everything I don't do well, and I got going on the things I do well. In other words, I didn't try and do it all. I honed in on this thing that I wanted to do. His keys to success are that he created a 5-year plan. He was going to work in a series. He wanted to get into a bunch of these watercolor societies because he felt like this was a door to other opportunities. You get asked to teach and so forth. His art school training made him highly competitive. He was always taught to do something fresh and present your best work. And after reaching goals of getting into shows, he set new goals, which was winning awards. Here's more of his influence. Again, the tape that you see on here, he has painted that. That is not real green tape. It's quite breathtaking when you see his work. The airbrushing and the masking, he's really able to do some amazing things. And this is pretty much all watercolor, by the way. And he's the one who said, if you want your work to get noticed, make sure it walks funny. And so he says, how to make your art walk funny is to keep learning and growing as an artist, move your work forward, technically, philosophically, intellectually. Do something that's different and uniquely you, but don't try to be weird. Just take something and say it in a way that hasn't been said before. And all that. This, if you've ever seen a Robert Rauschenberg, he paints in many mediums, but Rauschenberg took a real box and hung it thusly in the museum. Jeff realized that Amazon boxes are the artifacts of our time, and he created stencils. This looks like a real Amazon box, but he created his own stencils and airbrushed all of this on and called it Amazon Package from Robert, paying homage to Robert Rauschenberg.
I love it.
Isn't it great? This is one of Jeff's signature pieces. He, after all that success, it was kind of funny. He's going to turn 80 this year. He said, "Gosh, I feel like I'm walking in my own shadow. I'm trying to replicate or improve on my own success." And so he came up with a series of these beautiful paintings. He's in my critique group, so I feel like I've got a pretty good eye of a person looking at my work. On his painting style, he said, "How come all my paintings look similar?" And his answer is, because I've developed a visual vocabulary and I use elements that carry over into other paintings. It's all part of creating a series and a body of recognizable work. And I shortened this talk because some of it didn't pertain to you all, but I think we can all agree that tips for creating your best work, it may vary by medium, but some of the things that I do is I make sure my work is vetted by trusted artists. And you have to, foster and find those people. I learned to recognize when a piece is truly finished. You know, sometimes I can post it on social media and get some pretty good feedback um, from artists. Sometimes they're polite and they message me privately and tell me what needs to be fixed. Sometimes they just put it out there. I try to keep a list of my best paintings. Every year I kind of go through and just figure out which ones are my top notch. You need to create enough work so you have enough work. If if you're only doing your art infrequently, you're probably not going to get as good at it. You can work in a series and create variations on a theme. Repetition equals style. I sometimes put images on my computer in thumbnail and I look at them together to decide if all of them belong in a show together. If something stands out and looks wrong, it doesn't go in the show. And all that. Okay. Tracking and assessing your progress. At the end of each year, I write down all the workshops or instructors that I took and what I learned from each person. Remember, I want to learn one fresh thing from each person. I write down new methods or materials I've tried. I write down artists who've influenced me. And I make a top 10 list of my own best works and why they are important. It might not have been because they sold or because they got in a show. It might be because something in that work cracked open something in me and produced more work or something. And I make a list of shows I've entered. I guess we all need to ask ourselves, are we motivated? Are we scheduling enough time to make our work? Is our work getting seen by the public? It's been kind of hard lately, but there's social media and other online venues. And is your art getting vetted, examined, and discussed by your fellow artists? Are you attending critique groups? I was able to attend all of my groups via Zoom, and it was actually more productive than in person. Art is a conversation between the viewer and the artist. How do you keep the dialogue going? And so what's the takeaway? How do we aim for the ceiling? Embrace your influences, put the miles on the brush, paint, in my case, seek out honest feedback in your work, put the you into your work and tell a story, and create work that walks funny. After all is said and done, there is only the work. We are like Phil, played by Bill Murray in the movie Groundhog Day. The creative journey is not where you wake up in some mythical, happy foreign land. We have to wake up every day like Phil with more work to do.
I loved hearing you talk about the influences, Liz, especially, borrowing the yellow blank areas out of one painting and dropping and using it in a similar way, but with a very different result.
Right.
I think that's the best kind of being inspired and being influenced. It's the sort of thing I do. I love this color palette. I love this I love this thing that is forward, or I love this composition, and you can pick and choose.
I bet for you all, I mean, you probably see a technique or a glass style and you say, how did they get that? How did they get that combo? What did you use? And we don't often get to talk to the person who made the piece. We painters have to, and I'm sure you do too, look at something and kind of go, I think she put this down first and then she did. We do this all the time. I mean, people like to stand next to me at local shows because I'll go, I think she monotyped first and then she masked. And she, we love to do that. We're just nerds, just completely.
I think we all do that with Kim's work.
Glass can be really technique driven. And when people go to workshops, they go for technique. And part of the problem, I think, in our medium is that not enough people try to take a technique and do something new with it. And it breaks my heart to see the same stuff get recycled and reiterated, and no advancing on that approach, and no way of making it your own, because that's the hard part, is make it your own.
Oh, it is. I mean, like I said, I can't tell you how many speckled pear paintings I still see popping up. Women I know who took certain teachers here And it's the most obvious and wonderful way to make use of that open lace marbling that looks so speckled. I mean, you got to do it. You got to do a bunch of pairs and get them out of your system, and then go figure out what else am I gonna say with marble? Because otherwise, it can be very gimmicky for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Do you all capitalize on accidents that happen in your glass? But because I have accidents that happen in the tray, that is, something didn't transfer properly. It slipped. It did. It, you know, I don't know. I don't know if you have a parallel in your work, but I find those goof ups are just the most fun to develop because they don't look like anyone else's.
Right. I think most of us save our mistakes and save our less than successful pieces and cut them up and recycle because the material is not inexpensive. This is not an inexpensive hobby.
Marbling too, and yours is really not. And I noticed someone mentioned Austin Clay on Steal Like an Artist. I stole like an artist. I stole some of his quotes in this thing. I want to tell you that.
Yeah. So we're big on recycling, and a lot of times new stuff comes out of that.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah. Also in the chat, Joyce said a great little book is Steal Like an Artist. She said available on Amazon. And then Karen Newberger said, I meant to do that, which
I meant to do that. Oh my God, that's so true.
That is probably the best lesson I ever learned at Helios because I was so shy about my work. And Karen Tarlow would, constantly drill in. It's like, I meant to do that. I meant to do that. And
there's no accident. It's the hand of the artist, that they're just doing their thing. Yeah, absolutely. I was gonna, if you want to, I don't know. I mean, we can talk. I was going to show you some metamorphosis of, doesn't have any words. It's just images one after the other of plain marbled paper and then, if you want to see that.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right.
Look, I'm so red. I got windburn.
All right. Let me get out of this. Wait. Come on. All right. There we go. Let me close that. Let me move you guys down. And then open. I just want to be prepared for anything because I didn't know exactly. Oh, you know what? Has anyone seen marbling here? I have a really old video to show you from 2016 when I used to color my hair. Let me just, this was something that was made at a, I look so young, gosh darn it. It was made at a, we had open studios in the little gallery that and so someone shot this quick, it's a 1.5 minute video of me. I just thought you want to see it. It explains what marbling is. Let me start it. I'm going to do acrylic marbling today with high flow acrylics. I have a tray of carrageenan, and I'm going to start flicking paint into the tray. The first color I'm putting down is a bit of black and a bit of blue. This is sort of a stone pattern. And then I'll put a contrasting color on top, let's say red. As I drop the red in, it pushes the other colors out. And I would like to mix those colors or stir them together so that they'll make a nice pattern here. I'm going to get a stylus. Back and forth Gilgit pattern, sort of stripes or bands the colors together. And then I can do the zigzag this way for another effect. And last but not least, I can take a spaced comb here and run it through and make a different sort of pattern. And now I'm ready to put my paper in that I've treated with alum. And the paper is going to soak up this wonderful color, just like this. There's my pattern.
Oh,
that's beautiful.
Off the surface of it. color still remains on. It doesn't run because of the alum that I treated it with. And then I hang it up to dry over here.
Wow.
Oh, that
That is
girl.
ma-
So cute.
That's magic.
Gosh darn, she's so cute.
That is just magical.
Well, that is a tiny piece, and I was doing it really quick. Now, normally my combing has gotten way more sophisticated, and I have found out, and I don't know if you all use combs to make your patterns, but it turns out like there are so many different kind of combs. You can glue clothespins to a wooden dowel and make a wide comb. You can do metal pins and put them close together. So I took a class this summer from it was Zoom, a man named Pietro Accardi. He lives in Nevada. He's Italian. He mailed us these kits. I cannot believe it. He mailed us a real tiny tray, little combs that he'd made by hand. I mean, it was incredible. A little hard to take a marbling class, you know, through Zoom, but if you already know how to marble, it's not so hard. But it is just practice. It is like knowing what comb to choose and what to do with it and all that. And then you're like, oh, I need to see that again. I need to do that again. And that's the only way you can get better at it. But anyway, that was a quickie just for this group of people. Now I noticed really good marblers take their time and they run the comb through very carefully. It's backbreaking work. I don't know about the work that you do, but marbling is you're just standing for really long periods of time. You're reaching across, you're combing, you're rinsing everything. Then you have to hang it to dry. So you don't want to do it in 29-degree weather in your garage, you know. It's laborious. The older I get, the more I go, I don't know, do I want to marble today or would I rather just paint? I'm kind of tired today. But it is so rewarding. When I first did it, I mean, I was probably still in my 50s. I think I broke a record that day at Susie's. I must have done 60 papers in one day.
Wow.
And everyone was like, okay, Liz, you are the marbling queen. Well, I was younger and stronger then. Now I kind of pace myself. Now I kind of go, I'll do like 30 papers maybe. So
does that build up an inventory then for you to?
Oh Lord, yes. If you come to my house, I'll give you a piece of marble.
We'll be right there.
Yeah. I have rolled it up and I've traded papers with people. I met a lovely gentleman who lives up in Washington State. He came to Portland years ago to one of my classes, and he and I've kind of become pen pals, and we send each other, we'll trade marble papers. He'll say, I don't know what to do with this. I said, send it to me. I know what to do with that.
Yeah.
So it's very fun, but the possibilities are just limitless. The only thing that limits you is your own energy, really. Mm-hmm. And carrageenan, as I talked about in the video, is actually dried powdered seaweed. You can buy it by the pound, and you mix it with water in your blender. And you can't use it right away. You have to kind of let it sit overnight and then use it the next day. But because it's partly seaweed, after a couple of days, it starts to smell kind of funky on you. And so it breaks down pretty fast. So that's why you want to marble all day long and then toss it. Oh, it's torture.
I was mentioning earlier before everybody got on the call, is that for a while I was watching people marble their fingernails on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And so just basically using nail polish on water. Yeah, nail polish, because the old-fashioned marblers, I mean, back in the day, it's like you were using oil paint on water, right? But oil paint, as you can imagine, is messy. And how do you clean your tools? Turpentine, walnut oil. So as acrylic, became more popular, someone developed a way, and you can't really float acrylic paint on water because it will sink pretty much. Yeah. You can thin it real thin, but it'll probably sink. So someone, I don't know who, came up with this idea of mixing a water thickener. So you have a thickener, and you can use carrageenan or you can use methacellulose, which you can order from
Dharma trading, and that doesn't go bad as quickly, but it doesn't have quite the nice patterns, I think, as carrageenan. But yeah, and so you can marble. You may find this hard to believe. You can marble just about anything that paint will stick to. In fact, I've even marbled on some plastic papers called Yupo. I told someone that people, when we got going outside in the summer, we would marble Croc shoes. I mean, all you have to do is treat it with alum first. You take some powdered alum and water and kind of make a liquid, and you just have to brush everything that you're going to marble with this alum and let it dry. You can marble a leather bag, you can marble a notebook cover, you can marble a picture frame,
Car parts.
yeah, car parts. My friend had an old Ford with a wooden dash, but you need a huge tray, and so he marbled the dash on his old Ford, marbled the wooden steps at their house. And someone marbled a guitar. Somebody marbled a guitar. And I marbled a guitar for a friend this summer because he had built a guitar kit, with the wood, and he painted it orange. And I marbled it for him. And then he put the strings and stuff back on.
Oh, what fun.
It was really cool.
Do you look at art other than paintings for your own inspiration?
I have to admit, I really love paintings. I'm kind of narrow that way. But I mean, when I go to a museum, like we had the Wyeth exhibit a few years ago, father, son, and grandson. And I always think, oh, Wyeth, he's so, but gosh, those black and white, everything's so stark. It really inspired me, So I guess the short answer is I probably look more at paintings than other things, but I look at clothing sometimes online, or just things that come across my eyeballs. What do you
I have been obsessed with alcohol inks lately.
Oh, they are lovely.
Because they're transparent. They could be glass.
They are, and they look kind of, voluminous and glassy when they dry on that. They used it on that Yupo paper, on that plastic paper. Wow, those are lovely. They get some nice effects with that. Someone worried about the odor from the alcohol inks.
Is that right? I don't know a thing about it. I just look at it. Safety
issues and with your glass stuff, or
all kinds of.
Oh yeah, because especially the glass dust if we're working with powders and things.
Yeah. So do you all have to wear masks?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
And some of the glass, the colorants, I guess, whatever in the glass, some of them have lead. So yeah,
that's rough.
The refractory material we use for making glass not stick is extremely toxic. And gets airborne real easily. So everybody's all got the
or for casting.
So that is kind of you can't just do it anywhere, right? Do you do it in a studio or in your garage or a separate studio?
I think most of us make do with either a small studio in or outside of the house. But the equipment that we need in order to finish the grinding and polishing equipment is bulky and expensive, and so most of us go to Helios, which is a teaching studio, to use their equipment for that and pay an hourly rate. And that keeps some of that mess down, because managing the wastewater is a big deal.
I was gonna say, so wow, that's really so. Were you able to do some of that during the pandemic even, or
smaller numbers? Yeah,
kind of limiting. So
wow.
But now that you think about it, glass really is a pain in the butt.
Oh, I mean, I look at watercolors and I think you guys have it so easy. I mean, it's like even acrylic, you got to be careful you don't track it and spill it and get it all over your hands. I know I should wear gloves, but I don't deal with any real toxic colors. They don't put lead in acrylic paints anymore.
Yeah. I have some enamels from years ago that there's one called Forsythia Yellow that I found out had depleted uranium in it.
Oh my God.
And I didn't know that until I bought it on eBay.
They left that out.
What's that?
They left that out, huh?
They left that. Well, I don't think they knew, because it was sort of a vintage color. but there was forsythia yellow and burnt orange were both depleted uranium.
Wow.
Um,
That's
I
really
still
nice.
have it, but I never made anything to sell with that because I was afraid of it.
Yeah, yeah. So do you all make, I mean, what kind of things do you make? Like beads or and decorative art objects, or what do you?
Probably like platters, cups, bowls,
Mhm.
wall hangings, I guess, wall
Nice,
art.
Mhm.
nice.
So
And do you have like shows and sales that group things that you do, or do you sell in a gallery or?
I think probably all of the above.
Okay.
There's some folks, well, I think Kirsten just had a show. Kirsten, didn't you had a little show up there somewhere?
I I didn't have a show. I delivered art to a shop.
Gotcha.
Nice.
So
But Liz, you might have heard of the gathering of the Guild show that used to happen here. The
Uh-huh.
Glass Guild was one of those guilds that participated in that.
I see. Are they going to have it this year or no? Or did they have it? I thought I saw it.
It's usually in May. I haven't tracked on that this year. I don't know.
Well, we're going to have a paper arts festival that comes every other year to a nearby town called Forest Grove. And Pietro, the Italian man from Nevada I told you about, is going to come. So I may get to meet him in person. Hey.
That's always fun.
right.
Yeah, it is neat.
Meet the person that you've stalked.
Yeah. I got to meet him on a Zoom class. I took a Zoom class from him, but to meet him in person and say, hey, yeah, it's kind of neat. So it's cross fingers. Let's hope we're not being too soon about everything. I don't know.
Yeah.
Budding romance. Yeah. But I can tell you that right now I'm packing to move, and it's funny because you don't realize how much of my glass stuff is taking up so much room.
I know, and you got to pack that carefully. I
Yeah.
have heard. I've had some friends who moved in this pandemic, and some movers will not take. Well, they won't take any hazardous materials, but they won't even take like her acrylic paints because I guess they're afraid they'll spill or something.
Whoa.
And she had to get rid of a lot of stuff before she moved and start all over. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I know. We took canisters of gas when we actually drove a truck up ourselves up to our new place, because I had like a propane oxygen torch set up and whatever.
That's a little flammable. I could see where they'd say no on some things.
Yeah, but we actually took it up. It was well ventilated in there, but I've got my acetylene canisters I can't take. So I need to get rid of those here, but and somewhere around, God, it's like, damn that Facebook Marketplace, because I acquired a second kiln, and I'm like, oh crap, now I have to move it. So I'm probably going to sell it.
That reminds me, when you have a website and you say I'm an acrylic marbling person, people find you. And so during the pandemic, I mean, during the real pandemic, like no vaccinations, nothing.
Yeah.
Lady contacted me, found me online, and said I was going to take up marbling, but I never did. I have a whole box full of stuff. Here's where I live. I will put it on my front porch. You can come and get it. And I did. And I ended up with like more marbling.
Yeah, I now have bottle slumping molds. If anybody wants them, I'm not going to slump any bottles. So let me know.
Well, it's like people have good intentions. They see a marbling video or something specialized like what you're doing, and they go, I'm going to do it. I'm going to buy all the stuff. And then I'm going to do it. And it's like, hello, you need a good teacher, because you will waste a lot of time and money if you just haul off on your own and go, I think I'm going to try this really difficult art form. And I feel bad for people. So I have a feeling in people's basements and attics everywhere, there was a box of marbling stuff. They had good intentions. They were going to try, and they never did. And that's sad.
Yeah.
There's a paper museum in Houston. I know you guys are not close to Houston, but I was impressed during the pandemic. They have a marbling guy, and he did a couple of Zoom demos for us. So they have a really good affiliation with a marbling gentleman.
Cool.
So if you're ever in Houston, there has to be someone in Austin who marbles. I bet we could find someone.
Yeah. There's gotta be. Google search.
Yeah, exactly.
So
But when go ahead.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I had an experience in the last couple of months where I made a piece and I couldn't tell if it was any good or not.
Uh-huh.
And it was so disorienting not to know.
Oh,
That's interesting.
And it wasn't until I got feedback that I went, well, okay, which is bullshit. I shouldn't have to form my opinion based on what I hear, but I really couldn't tell.
that is true, but we are human beings, and I think feedback. Okay, you can't create art in a vacuum. I mean, you can, but don't you think after? I mean, like in the early days of the pandemic, I was really itching to talk to people again, so we got right on to the Zoom thing and figured that out. But I mean, you're creating that art for someone. You could say, "Oh, it's just for me." But if it's just for you and you could sit in the closet and do it all day, I don't think that's the same as putting it out there and going, what do you think, people?
Yeah.
So I think getting a second opinion, I read something the other day that said, oh boy, this is really that not so great artists think everything they do is wonderful. It's like artists who are really talented, who have the most self-doubt and the most struggle. I don't know if that's true, but I read it somewhere.
I think that's all of us were telling Kim. It's like, oh yeah, I'm not so sure about that one. Then she'll toss it and then we acquire it. It's yeah.
It's a trick. It's a trick. But I mean,
trick, Kim.
If you're doing something new that you haven't done before, it should come as a surprise to you.
Yeah.
And you will be floored, and you'll go, how did I've had paintings like that where I walked in and I showed my husband, who's a very discerning critic, and I showed him, he went, stop, don't do anything further to that. And then I show it to my trusted art friends, and I get that as well. Certain people in your life, they have radar, and their little antenna will go up when they see something, and you learn to hang out with those people a little bit and just run it past them. It's no weakness on your part. We just can't see it. We're too close.
Yeah. Well, see, Kathy has a question. She says, I got to know, how do you marble steps?
Oh, well, so they're wooden steps. What happened is, I believe that they were rebuilding their steps, and they took the wood step out of the, they already, they're going to redo it anyway. And so he probably sanded it and did everything like that. And then he got a huge tray. And when I say huge, I mean, we're talking big enough to put a big thing of steps in.
Right.
And so you have to have gallons of carrageenan, I mean, miles. And plus, then if you're putting paint in, you have to work for a good, 30 minutes to get the paint filled on the surface of that tray, all over that tray. And then with two people, you got to hold on to the thing, and you have to kind of roll it through your tray. It's very difficult.
Now, did you do the top of the steps or the front?
I think they did just,
riser.
well, how did they do it? They could have done it in phases. They could have done it one thing at a time. I don't think they had just the boards and then they built the steps. I'll have to ask Susie's husband. But I have watched them do a guitar. You just have to roll it through that thing. I did a basket, a big tall basket. I painted it white first, and then I just rolled it through. You just roll it like you can put a.
Don't you get finger marks?
No, because you get paint on your fingers is what you get.
Well, that's all right, but
you just you can either devise something almost like corn on the cob holders if you wanted, like a straw basket. You could almost put corn on the cob type holders through it, and then you just turn it, and it drinks up the paint. I mean, I've seen people plunge. I've seen some videos. I don't know what they're using. It may be oil paint or enamel, but they're dipping car parts, fenders, like things. Yeah.
Brake calipers.
Yeah, there you go. That'd be funny to have a marbled car, but you'd have to do it section by section. I don't know.
I mean, they wrap cars. They actually do
Oh yeah, they do the
vinyl
skin and then
wraps.
they
Yeah, they
wrap
do
it.
wraps.
You're right. You're right.
So you
We-
could marble your car.
Yeah, we learned how to marble, well, canvases. Now you would think that the acrylic paint would run off, but what you have to do is certain items that are more difficult, when you marble them, you pull them out of the tray and you don't rinse right away. You can rinse paper right away and the marbling won't come off. But
Gotcha.
the plasticky type items, you have to just kind of set them for about 5 minutes, let it set, and then maybe gently rinse it. They tell me you rinse it because if you don't, the carrageenan is a little cloudy when it dries. Some people never rinse.
Gotcha.
I just find the paper takes too long to dry if you don't rinse it. But so you realize it's wet and messy, so you want to do it in, I say the Texas sun, but you don't want it too hot because the carrageenan in your tray will get too broken down and funky. A comfortable temperature, like, I don't know, when it's about 75 outside, it's really nice.
It was like that yesterday. So, you know, it's,
Wow. We get low humidity too, so it's pretty nice. Oh, it's so lovely.
it's
But
so
anyway,
lovely.
yeah, it's super fun. I just, but yes, you get a boatload of paper. You get so much paper. I can never develop all those into paintings in my lifetime. I just can't. And we artists have been talking about, I'm in a critique group with some women who are even older than me. And we were talking about what happens when you pass on, like if your kids don't do art, who's going to want your stuff, you know? So we're starting to have those discussions in our group too. When do you cut yourself off, you know?
I'm dealing with that right now.
If someone tells me I can't do art anymore, I just don't think I can go on.
Yeah.
It's
So,
such a comfort, isn't it?
it really is. Let's see. Oh, hold on one sec. Checking out. There was a chat message. Let me see.
Everybody wants to be so quiet and not intrude, but I think we're through the hardest part now.
Yeah. Let's see. And then somebody had asked where you're located, and that is Portland, right?
Portland, Oregon, yeah. Just Beaverton
Portland.
is just outside of town. Quick access to downtown on the freeway.
Mhm.
And Manny and his wife came and visited me in 2018, and we got to be in my laundry room and do
Road trip.
Well, you know, it's funny, there's a whole tradition of marblers somewhere on the East Coast. And if you ever get to Amherst, Massachusetts, which we used to live in Eastern Mass, but there's a group there called Chaina River Marblers, a man and a woman named Regina and John St. John. And they are master marblers. I can't even begin to tell you. There's a Facebook page called International Marbling. And you can join it if you just want to see marbling porn, you know, all day long. But they are two amazing teachers. And they, even in COVID times, they would drive down the East Coast and hold outdoor workshops in like North Carolina and places that had more moderate, you know, climates. But they are strictly East Coast. And their work is just, I mean, I look at it and I just go, how in the world? And they're holding classes, but kind of hard to get to the East Coast, but yeah, there's just some master marblers out there, and there's books, but trying to learn marbling from a book is like trying to learn swimming from a book. It just, I don't think it can be done. I mean, it maybe, but I can't tell you how many times I still go back to those books and I try and parse what it is they're saying, because it's really hard to describe the direction that the rake is supposed to go. They'll have arrows pointing, you know. I just can't until I see it and practice it. I just don't have it in my head, but I have a lot of marbling books that I bought used. I like to look at them, but they're not very instructive.
Glass instruction ground to a halt during COVID because so many of our top people travel the world and they teach.
Right.
And a lot of them come to Austin. And so it has been a desert until fairly recently, and it's starting to ramp up again.
Wow. That is, we painters were a lot luckier. It was a lot easier to just put a camera overhead and teach that way. In fact, some students said they preferred it because they had the great, they had the best seat in the house. They could see right
Yeah.
over you. But you have
Well,
to
Liz,
be
not as much
organized.
fun as being in your laundry room.
Envy.
Okay, now you're just bragging. But when you're doing visual stuff, and also I'm very organized, so I would do my demos like a cooking class. I would have step 1 already done, and then I'd go on to step 2 like that.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed it. I would have hated if teaching altogether had been grind to a halt during COVID, because
Yeah.
I got to take an East Coast painter named Pat Dews that I liked for years, and here she was teaching via Zoom. I didn't have to fly to Florida. How wonderful was that? So
Yeah.
it's not quite the same. You're not in the class with the people and showing each other work. Although I had them email me their JPEGs, and we would have a slideshow.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we did that one. So.
Well, and Kim actually did one of her classes. It's called Watercolor Glass. It was like the first prototype that she did with a group of women from Portland.
Nice.
So we started getting really creative about how do you get that information out there.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many artists I got friendly with and emailed on the side, and then we do a Zoom talk or just a telephone talk. It was very comforting in these times.
Yeah.
Very comforting.
I think this has kept us going.
Right.
We do
This
this
is
every
amazing.
couple of weeks.
I've never heard of people meeting twice a month like that. I mean, we're lucky if we can get critique groups to, meet once a month like clockwork. But Friday night, how inventive of you all.
Sometimes people will bring a glass of wine.
Wow.
And they don't have to drive home, so they just
I know. That's
sign
another
off or
thing.
fall asleep in their chair a bit.
I think I've forgotten how to drive at night. I hate to say that.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's good. So
I've
oh
been
my
home too long.
goodness.
But
I love how your work transitioned though. I like how as you learn the different steps, how it evolved. I thought that was fascinating.
it's I just took it was a little hokey, but I took this free little online seminar, and then of course you can pay for the full thing. There's a lady named Nancy Hillis, Hillis, and she's a PhD from Palo Alto, very smart. But her basic philosophy, it like hit me like a pie in the face in early February when I took it, and it was that, and because she said she experienced it herself. If you know exactly what you're going to do every time you go into the studio, how boring is that? And also, if you're turning out work that sells because somebody wants it or somebody expects you to paint that way, that can get really, it can really drive you into a corner as an artist. So she said, and I took this to heart, you want to surprise yourself every time you go in the studio. And it's like, whoa. Now that's throwing down a challenge. What you mean? And what I did was I did about 13 paintings in 13 days. They were small, but here's what happened. I had this stack of like 13 paintings that were stuck. They'd been stuck in place for 6 months. I couldn't move forward. I couldn't move back. I didn't like them, but I thought, oh, I'm going to finish that someday. Well, 6 months had gone by. So what I did with all of those paintings is I let go of whatever I thought that was going to be. And I started playing with acrylic inks, and I did some abstractions, and I did some stuff. And if those I posted a few, and some friends saw, and they were like, this is amazing. And I said, I'm having fun now. I'm not like letting that painting tell me, okay, well, you're going to paint that figure and you're going to paint with the same thing around it, because that works, Liz.
Right.
And so I ended up surprising myself every day for a month. And then I just kept going.
Wow.
Oh, well,
So
and I think we've seen
one person to nudge you and
Yeah.
annoy you a little bit and go, are you playing it safe?
Yeah.
Well, and I think even too with the pandemic, because I mean, we've all watched, Kim has come up with some new techniques and she's been experimenting.
That's nice.
Because you could sometimes recognize that's a Kim Brill. I mean, it's her technique was she had the body of work, and you could really tell what pieces were hers. And some of the stuff she's come up with lately is completely different.
That's really great. Well,
Gorgeous.
there's a teacher, Fran Larson, in New Mexico, and she used to give her students like a boring assignment where they had to paint the same chair, you know, on their paper every day, just monotony over and over. And on the final day, or on whatever day it was, they got bored and they started to innovate. And now they did it different, and they abstracted it. Because I mean, that's what our brains do. Like, we're creative. And so if if it gets too rote, then just stop being rote and do something else.
I think one of the things I like about glass is you can approach it so many different ways. You can, you know, dealing with powdered glass is so different than dealing with sheet glass. It's almost like they're two different mediums, but not really. And not everything has been figured out yet. You know, it's a young art. It's 50 years old.
That is young. That's really young.
So people are innovating every single day. And that's the thing I love best about it, is there are new things to be found.
That is great. That is great, because marbling is an ancient art, and yet because of acrylics, in some ways it's probably only 50, 60, you know, the acrylic part of it is probably only 50, 60 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And I think too, we see a lot of artists that come over from painting or different mediums, you know, like even sculpture, because you've got some people who are phenomenal with modeling in wax or clay, but then they turn those into cast glass pieces. Or, you know, the people who are more painterly and are used to, you know, actually painting on a canvas, you can see those influences when they start working with like powdered glass, or, you know, kind of mixing it with a medium and using a palette knife and really getting textures to it.
Yeah, I see the crossover. That's pretty neat.
You know, bullseye glass is mecca for people like us. They are not just a manufacturer, they're the tastemaker. And they support a very small stable of artists. And one of the things that they did some years ago, which was really smart, was they invited artists from other mediums to come in and learn with them for a month. And not only were they tapping into their collector base, because these were extremely established people, but people started doing things that hadn't been done before. And there's a New Mexico artist named Judy Tuletstiwa who was a painter, but she also did collage with leaves and twigs and sticks and stuff like that. Well, they taught her how to do glass, and she began making little tiny powder wafers the size of leaves, and she would stick them on a canvas and treat them almost like paint dabs.
Oh my God.
And it was an entirely different way of looking.
Wow.
And
that's really mixed.
Really smart.
Yeah, the powder wafers, Liz, it's basically using the powdered glass, but fusing it just enough to where the powder sticks together.
Okay.
So they can have kind of a crystally or sugary look.
I see.
Or you'll see Kim was doing some experimentation where she was layering them, or wasn't Melina also? Kim, wasn't that, she was overlapping powder wafers?
She overlapped wafers,
Yeah, she's a phenomenal artist that comes to the studio as well, but she was also doing some really cool stuff with those wafers. But
you can basically paint with glass. When you use powders, you can paint with glass. And sometimes you mix it with medium and you literally paint with it. And sometimes you sift it and sprinkle it.
Or screen print it.
Or screen print it, yeah.
This reminds me, I'll have to send you later because I can't pull it right up, but I saved it somewhere. A couple years ago, I got a phone call because my other marbling friend was out of town and didn't answer her phone, so they called me. Some outfit in Portland who they were shooting a commercial for Adidas shoes, and they needed someone to marble. And I wasn't quite sure what they had in mind, but they told me the color. They said, "Here's the shoe," and it was some cleated football shoe that had beautiful colors, magenta, cyan, and yellow. Here's the shoe. we need you to come in. And it was so funny, you guys. I felt like, you know, the priest and Godfather who get, I mean, not Godfather, the other Exorcist, who gets called in with his bag and he sort of comes into the, and it was some weird studio on the other side of town. It was in the middle of a snowstorm in February. It was just weird. But my husband and I, and we come into this place and it's like, we're like the old people. Everyone is dressed in black. It's a cavernous studio and there's just lights and camera action. They're shooting all these commercials for shoes, you know? And they bring me over and I wait my turn and, you know, when is it? Okay. So I come over with my colors and they've erected this small, no, it's big tray, but it's narrow. It's like so not even tall at all. And I have my carrageenan in a little jug and they put this under the lights and I pour my carrageenan and I start doing the colors and they have a guy on a ladder filming and then taking stills. And I'm just putting the colors in. They are recording the marbling spreading in the tray. And they have the shoe, which is similar colors, up on a block of, I don't know, dry ice or something above it. But it cracked me up because now that marbling is for all time. Like if I find the video for you, you'll see that it's my marbling, but I'm not in there. But it's just a funny thing. I mean, someone in their creative department went, this is what I want. I want colors to go boom, boom on the surface while we exalt this shoe and loud music plays.
Oh my goodness.
It was.
Liz, I have to confess, you're one of my inspiration. You and Kim are two of my inspirations, actually.
Oh.
And when I took Richard Parrish's class and we had to bring a piece that inspired us, it was you, because you use colors I just can't use and make me love them.
He said that.
No, I hadn't thought about that, but knowledge of color is probably important in this, isn't it? You know, knowing what might look good together. I mean, you have to make
Absolutely.
some choices, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Richard's class was amazing. I'm now looking at everything around me and analyzing color. It's driving me nuts.
So color is magical, and there's so many things. Like we were taught the color wheel, but then there's some offbeat kind of matches that you can do that you wouldn't think of, you know. And so yeah, you can push color to a great degree. But well, that's wonderful to hear, Manny. I had so much fun marbling. People always ask, do you teach marbling? I'm like, no, but I sure like one-on-ones. I mean, they're really fun because it's not so busy. It's really hard marbling with a large group of people. We used to do it in Susie's backyard, but sometimes it would get a little bit warm out there. And there were days, afternoons when it would hit 90 degrees and you're like, I'm done. So real marblers in ye old England and all that marbled indoors because you didn't want any dust, any leaves, any outside pollens, anything messing up your tray for sure.
Interesting. That's fascinating. Okay.
I if you want to see a few more pictures, I have something I can show you. Okay.
That would be great.
All right, I'm gonna show you some more pictures. Hang on one sec. Let me open my little thing first. This is more progressive. Let me see if this is the one. Yeah. This will just show you how the paper became into a painting kind of step by step, which is always fun. All right, go away, little pop up there. Don't do that. Go back here. Now we'll share screen. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. Okay. I'm just trying to find the. I can't see because the screen's covering it up.
Oh, I know how that goes.
Go away, little thing. Is that it? I can't see it. Let me see if I can pull my screen down. Gosh darn it. Home. Oh, slideshow. There we go. Slideshow. There we go. Okay. So this is the one you saw, I think, in my slideshow. how it got built. And, you know, you make decisions, you make bad decisions, and then you cover it up with red. Uh, the struggle is real. This one's funny. I call this the Ghost of Elvis because in the upper left, I saw an Elvis with sunglasses. So I just capitalized on that. And don't ask me why I put these other women underneath him. I guess Elvis is larger than life. What can I say? So I just had fun coaxing subject matter out of funky marble things. This is the mistake one I told you about. This is the one where we didn't alum the paper properly. So when I pulled it out of the tray, it just bled. And if you look in the lower left, there's that shoe. And there's how I built it up. I just see things. You know what one of my clients told me? She says, Liz, I think you pull secrets out of paper. And I said, that needs to be my new
Love
logo.
that.
Pulling
They do
secrets.
look, they're shoes. They totally are shoes.
They totally are shoes, you know. I mean, why can't everyone see that? Now, this is more like what you get when you spray some synthetic, they call it ox gall. It's not real gall of an ox, but it's a surfactant, and it breaks through your color and makes white specks of the paper. And so what I did was I glazed over that with acrylic to sort of calm down all those white places. And then I started building my subject matter on top of that with this water-soluble crayon. Again, with the beige, not a good idea. Tried that red thing in the back. Nope, not a good idea. Painted that out. This is what I love about acrylics. You can just keep going in and layering. And then that was the finished piece.
Oh, wow.
Fascinating.
Now this is my couple. See, I love papers like this, but it's kind of a Italian vein is what they call it, but mine's pretty pale. And so then you see how I start building up the man, but he looks really menacing. So then I didn't like his hand like that. My critique group told me it looks like he's like gonna punch her, so you better fix that. So then I flattened out his hand. But you see, I am actually a better illustrator of people now. This is an early piece, but it's still funky and it still works. I mean, I still like it. But if I drew it today, I might fix those cartoon hands, you know. Now this is something funny. This is a watercolor, kind of blurry at low resolution, of my daughter's feet. I had done a watercolor painting, and then check this out. I marbled over it. And do you know, that's all I had to do. My brother has this painting hanging on his wall, but that bubble that happened in the middle, that was just like a blip. You know, I put some dispersant there and it put a hole, but it looks like she's looking down through this water and there's like a clear space there. I love it. I love what it did to her feet. See how they were just flesh?
Yeah.
And then I did it over in blue and brown, and it lies over. It's the same color over the whole painting, but it looks different because her flesh is lighter value.
Wow.
That's wild.
It's very wild. I've never been able to replicate this, and it pisses me off because I want to. Now, this is another watercolor. This is the kind of way I used to paint. Beautiful watercolor. And then I just went over the whole thing with Italian vein. And you do this, you put a lot of color in the tray, and then you get a mouth atomizer. I don't know if you know what that is, but you put one end in your in your dispersant, and then you blow into the other, and it blows that dispersant to where it breaks up all that color and just leaves it like this little cracked egg shell look. And so you dip your painting in, and that's that. And you may say, well, why does watercolor not run? Well, watercolor on good paper, I mean, you're using staining colors, it pretty much stays, even though you're dipping it in water. Now, this is a neat painting. I'm sort of proud of this. Again, very traditional painting. And then I did that thing that I told you, that Italian vein over it. But then I cleaned it up a little. I actually painted white acrylic around the right-hand side. And then I took a little rubber stamp that I had that makes that crackle effect. And I just dipped it in black acrylic, and I filled in the rest. You know, I covered up the roses in the vase that I didn't want to get messed up.
Wow.
It's a fix. It's a trick.
Fascinating.
And then this is just a watercolor of a vase. I just turned on its side and then I marbled it. And what did I do? I made pears. It's just too easy. But you can see how all that rich watercolor underneath formed the basis of this beautiful overlay. A lot of us really, and this is a neat one too. This was a landscape. I did a demo in a class and it's pretty and all that, but I turned it this way and then I marbled it and then I built up flowers on it.
I love it.
Isn't it amazing? I'm really proud of that one because that little band of what was sky before just it forms a nice kind of 1/3 composition, and the flowers is 2/3 composition of that page, which just is a nice offset. And then this is the speckled pears that you saw. Didn't get very good pictures, but then I got it professionally photographed at the end, and it looks fantastic.
That is just gorgeous.
It's very hard to photograph shiny canvases.
Yeah.
Part of why I mostly paint on paper is it's so much easier to photograph.
Yeah.
This
I
is
have
go ahead.
pears on my work table right this minute.
Really
Yeah,
Like
I do.
real fruit pears?
No, like glass pear. A glass pear.
Oh,
Oh.
I have some marbled pears. I'll show you one. It's a concrete one. I'll lift it off the. So this is a monotype. This is a little different, but I saw kind of ears and a nose and an eye sticking out. So
Yeah.
I kind of made a wolf out of it, and so I painted it like this.
Oh, she made it done.
Oh,
So I painted the background in so it was darker, and then I marbled it.
Wow.
Yeah, this painting, my aunt bought it and gave it to my cousin, but unfortunately it burned up in that fire a couple years ago she lived in Bonnie Doon, California, up in the hills there, and they had that bad fire. So I wish I had a better copy to make a print from. I was very good photography back then, but
Oh.
anyway, this is a double marble. So if you can perceive underneath the swirls going the one way is a very light marbling, very pale. Then I re-allumed it, treated it with alum again, and dipped it back through a new marble tray. So I have the brown swirls, and I started to do her, and
Mm, mm.
I had a whole series of windswept growth. See, my heads are getting bigger. I was maturing as an artist. No more pinheads. And then this is just a blobby piece of paper, but I'm really proud of the fact that I have, like an iPad or iPhone in my studio. So I'll just drop down and take a
He's not
picture
there.
real
I think
quick.
he's in the room.
And then I marble. And you can tell it's kind of a figure, but she needs some cleaning up. So I cleaned her up. Did a little bit more. Did that.
Mm.
I did that.
This looks like so much fun.
I
It's
love
so
that.
reductive, it's so reductive. It's taking that wild and crazy. I mean, most people would see this and go, what the heck? I mean, what have you got? It's all blobbed across. What is that blob? But with acrylic paint, you can cover up in layers so many things and just carve out the part that you want.
Right.
So that's
Stunning.
all of that.
That is so cool.
I was going to show you one of my concrete pears.
You say a concrete pear?
Yeah, they're concrete. So what happened is I was downtown with a friend a couple years ago in this kitchen caboodle shop. It's like what do you call that? It's like a local kitchen shop. And they had these concrete pears. They were gray. They were ugly. And so I bought a couple of them. And
Oh,
I
wow.
marbled it. But I got to tell you, folks, it's not easy to marble a concrete pear. I mean, you have to hold it and roll it, and so it's a little messy. I think a better idea would be to make an acrylic marbling film and then put it on the pear.
Oh.
It's not easy. 3D objects are a lot harder to turn in the tray. But
Yeah. It's very cool though.
Oh, how fun. Great. Now I want to paint. I can.
No, Kim, no.
I don't have time to do the glass.
That's how I see. I do. I see, you know, I've taught people this method of pulling secrets out of paper, and they're just like, how do you see what you see? And I go, I don't know. It's like a Rorschach or something. I mean, just look at the pattern and you start to visualize what could be. And then you paint out all the other things that don't look like that. I mean,
That's
it's
the
like,
part you can't teach.
yeah,
Right.
that is a hard, and that was my favorite part to teach. And I wish more, everyone wants to learn how to marble. I'm like, anybody can show you how to marble. I want to show you how to turn it into a painting, you know?
I love it.
So,
Oh, so we had a chat comment. Diana says, Liz, I love how you see. Totally awesome. Your work is, oh, I'm sorry, totally amazing. Your work is awesome. So
I appreciate that. It's a vision thing.
You should follow Liz's work on Facebook. That's how we happen to own a second of her pieces.
Ooh.
Yes, I post every day. I am devoted. I know the evil meta universe, but the thing is, love it or hate it, I mean, I steer clear of other stuff on Facebook, but I really like the discipline of needing, for whatever reason, don't ask me why, to put a piece out there every day. And maybe, you know, if I'm busy that day, maybe it's a slightly older piece or whatever. But I pretty much at the end of every day have something I've produced that I could put up. It's great discipline. And I'm mostly doing it for my artist friends. I mean, a cousin or a friend or an old friend like Manny will see it, and I appreciate that too. But my art friends, I can always tell from their comments, you know. And I don't know why I like it.
That's cool.
I enjoy that arena.
Are you also on Instagram?
I'm on Instagram. I'm called Liz Marble Artist on Instagram. Liz
Following
Marble
now.
I try and post to both. I'm getting used to Instagram. I started using that about a year ago because that's where all the cool kids are.
Right.
And so yeah, I post to there. I just find the interface a little bit weirder. But,
Weird. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There you are.
But
Following.
Liz Marble Artist.
That's so cool.
That's good to do that.
Very cool. Well, Kim, do you have any?
Are you sated, or is there anything else you would have I overstuffed you for dinner here?
I have so much to think about.
I know your brain's gonna hurt. I'm gonna email you, Kim. I'll just email it to you if that's okay.
Sure.
PDF of our notes, so you just have some of those quotes and stuff. And then I'll try and find that Adidas link because it's amazing.
Yay, Adidas!
And you know what the shoe was called? The shoe was called Texas Oil. It had like little oil drops on it, and it said Texas. It was a theme. It was like fire and ice. So at all these different stations, they had like a fiery red thing, and they had something going off over there, and they had an icy color one over here, and then they had this Texas Oil one. It was like tripping. I felt like I was in a nightclub.
And it was a shoe?
It was, all this was, you know, big money for commercials for a shoe, right? They were filming bits that you put on the internet or on the Instagram, like a video and stills for these products for Adidas. In other words, the person in Portland was like Adidas was their client.
Ah.
And they were filming these bizarro commercials, and they had high concepts. And there was one man, his job was to run around and get procure all the physical items they needed for all of these commercials. We talked to him for a few minutes. I was like, what a job.
Kim, if you're at all interested, I just emailed you one of Liz's pieces that we fell in love with when she posted on Facebook. We now own
Is it the dancer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aw.
A dancer remembers. It's so special when someone really connects with your piece. It really is.
Oh yeah.
What you achieve with color, though, Liz, really is amazing. I mean, some of your pieces just sometimes leave me breathless.
Mm.
Now I'm blushing. Well, I mean, you know, we're not born with knowledge. I would tell you that. So if you if you knew the number of teachers that passed through Portland that I've taken over the years, it's astounding. I mean, it cumulatively adds to much more than my 4 years of college. You know, I mean, I cherish that art education as well, but I think I did most of my learning about color through watercolor and all these associations here.
Oh, wow.
It's amazing. It's a wonderful world. We're lucky.
Your work is amazing. So
Yeah.
and I love too how it's even just looking at it, trying to think about that, how it could apply to glass or similar things. I think that's there's definitely a connection there.
Yeah, I think when you get beautiful things running together and forming, you know, you want to do something with it. It's like, well, what can I turn this into, or how can I shape it? You only have so much control. I'm sure that's the same with your medium. You have such little control, but you have just enough at the right moment to turn that corner.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
It's timing.
Mm.
It's
So
timing.
Liz, had you seen combing? Had they talked to you about that?
No, they mentioned combing, and you know,
Yeah.
Manny and Karen didn't tell me everything about their glass thing because they were trying to absorb all that I was. But
Yeah.
you all, what do you comb with? Do you comb with a?
Well, basically, if you're bringing it up to a high temperature in the kiln, you could, you know, apply glass in different ways, but then you take a metal object and comb it.
Okay. Yeah,
So
yeah.
some of it actually looks like some of the marbling, which is
I bet it
interesting.
does. I bet it does. It's a
Yeah.
very similar thing. So you're combing like a metal comb through like hot glass, basically. Wow.
Or like a rod, you know, that
A
has a
rod.
long handle so you don't burn yourself.
Okay,
Right.
yeah, this could
Yeah.
be dangerous. I mean, marbling is messy, but it's not dangerous.
Yeah, this one could be dangerous.
Wow.
Oh, Kat, we need to do a Fusing Friday on combing because I know there's video out there. Tanya's got stuff.
Yes. And you know,
Let's-
I have to say, it's something I've never done. I've never combed.
What?
I've
What?
never done freeze and fuse, and I've never combed.
Oh, honey.
I know. But Kim and we should tell it. We should mention that next week, Kim and I are going to do the Nathan Sandberg Marini
Yeah.
technique. We're going up to Helios to go do. We're basically so you put glass in a flower pot and you put it in a kiln, and it comes out the bottom of the kiln, and you make these rods of glass.
Oh my gosh.
So there's a class that Kim and I have purchased online, so we're going to go up and actually do it next week. But
That's great.
yeah,
So you guys are like the ringleaders of this group.
we
You-
kind of
Liz-
fell into this role.
You would love glass, Liz. You would love it.
I need another hobby like a hole in the head. You know?
I know. Kirsten, Liz, you guys should get together at
Yeah.
Pambici over on Everett Street. You should go over there.
Oh,
and have lunch.
yum.
Yeah.
Oh,
Invite Linda Ethier, and you guys should go have lunch.
Yeah, Liz, Kirsten, bring her over to the dark side.
It's a one-way trip. I'm warning you.
Although I would drive to Portland to go to Pambici again. It was really good.
okay, yeah, Pambici. Okay, I think I've heard of it.
I think Everett Street, I think, is where Linda
Everett,
Ethier's.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
My husband is such a great cook. We never need to go out to eat, but
Oh.
but
Yeah,
we
there
used
was
to a bit when he worked at Intel and we had we went out for dates and things with friends. Yes, we would go to restaurants sometimes. He was busy then, but now he has all the time in the world. He's retired.
Nice.
Yes, he's older than me.
Yeah, great. I'm retired.
Well, Kirsten, email me then so we can have each other's email.
Okay. And I'll find you on Facebook. How about that?
Yeah, find me on Facebook, or you can just Google Liz Walker artist, and I think my site comes right up, and then you can just email me through there if you want, and then I'll.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Very fun.
Cool.
Excellent. So our next Fusing Friday in 2 weeks, we're going to look at iridized glass.
Woohoo.
And I'm going to troll the internet for fabulous examples. And if anybody wants to send me images, I can put those into our presentation, but irid is a whole different career
Yep.
with a whole different look. So we're going to Liz, would love you to join us if you have nothing to do on a Friday evening at 5 o'clock your time.
Well, the time difference is a little bit of a struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
this-
It's worth the struggle.
It's worth the struggle.
Yeah, we had, what was it? A lady joined us from Israel one time. That was interesting.
Mhm.
So, that makes us internationally known.
That's it.
It's the internationally famous Fusing Friday.
You
So
bet. Yes.
anyway, it's all good.
It
But
is.
I guess anybody else got anything else?
It's almost your bedtime.
I know, right?
Pretty close.
Winding down.
Hey, there's Andy. He's back again. Yay.
I just
Yay.
had the camera off. Good. Liz, thanks so much for doing this.
Yes,
Oh, you're
Liz,
welcome.
this was
Yes.
inspiring.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So
I love being with other creatives and you make me feel so valuable.
well, join us anytime. I mean, we cover all sorts of different things. So
Okay. Well,
So-
sounds great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
we
All
appreciate
right.
This has been fabulous, Liz. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.